Welcome to your deep dive.
Oh.
Today, we're going to get into something really delicious.
Hmm.
Chocolate.
Oh, yeah.
And we're talking everything, bean to bar and beyond, all that good stuff.
You have a really interesting mix of sources for this deep dive. I'm seeing everything from like ancient history to the modern chocolate industry with a little,
Yeah,
a dash of fun facts thrown in.
right. I really wanted to understand what makes chocolate so special,
Okay.
beyond just how good it tastes,
Yeah.
And one source goes all the way back to the Olmecs in 1500 BC. They were the first to cultivate cacao trees.
1500 BC. Wow, that's incredible. And it wasn't just a food source for them.
Right.
The Mayans, they used it in religious ceremonies, and get this, even as currency.
Really?
Imagine buying your groceries with cacao beans.
And getting paid in chocolate.
Ha-ha! Exactly.
Oh, speaking of, one source mentioned Napoleon Bonaparte was a huge fan.
Oh, yeah.
Fueled his armies on it, apparently.
He was, but back then it was mostly consumed as a drink. Not the solid bars we know today.
Okay, so no chocolate bars for Napoleon. How do we get from, like, bitter chocolate water to what we know now?
That's where the Industrial Revolution comes in.
Okay.
In the 1800s, innovations like the hydraulic press and the conching process were invented, and that allowed chocolate to be mass-produced in solid form for the first time.
Wow, okay.
Before that, imagine just sipping on bitter chocolate water.
I can't even, I mean, those 19th century innovations sound like they were game changers.
Oh, yeah, they were.
So what were some of the key breakthroughs that led to the chocolate we know and love today?
So one of your sources actually goes into great detail about that.
Okay.
It all started in 1828 with a Dutch chemist named Coenraad van Houten. He discovered a way to separate the cacao butter from cacao liquor. That's essentially just a paste from the beans using a hydraulic press.
Okay.
And this was huge because it removed a lot of the bitterness from the chocolate, making it, much more palatable and easier to work with.
Gotcha. So Van Houten's invention kind of set the stage for, like, solid chocolate.
Yes. It was a pivotal moment. Then, in 1847, a British chocolatier named Joseph Fry took that innovation even further.
Okay.
He figured out how to combine that cacao powder with sugar and the separated cacao butter to create the first solid eating chocolate bar.
Wow. Joseph Fry, what a legend.
I know, right?
Talk about changing the game.
And the innovations didn't stop there. Just a few years later, Daniel Peter, a Swiss chocolatier, added milk powder to that mix.
Oh, wow.
And bam! Milk chocolate was born.
It seems like everyone was just trying to outdo each other with these chocolate innovations.
Yeah, it was like a chocolate revolution.
I love it. So we've got milk chocolate, but what about that smooth, melt-in-your-mouth texture?
Oh, that's all thanks to another Swiss chocolatier, Rodolphe Lindt. In 1879, he developed a process called conching. Basically, it involves smoothing and refining the chocolate mixture for hours, sometimes days, to get that texture just right.
Conching. So that's the secret. It's incredible how much work goes into making chocolate.
It really is. One of your sources even mentioned that it takes 400 cacao beans to make just 1 pound of chocolate.
Wow. 400 beans for just 1 pound. I had no idea.
Yeah, it's a multi-step journey. From harvesting the pods to fermenting, drying, roasting, and grinding the beans. And then, of course, conching to bring it all together.
I'm exhausted just thinking about it. But it makes you appreciate each bite even more, knowing how much care and effort goes into it.
Definitely. And each of those steps plays a crucial role in creating the chocolate we know and love.
So let's break it down. What's the very first step? Where does it all begin?
It all starts with harvesting those precious cacao pods. And believe it or not, in many parts of the world, this is still done by hand.
By hand. Wow, that's incredible.
It's true. They often use machetes to carefully cut the pods from the trees.
Wow, that's pretty labor intensive. You don't usually think about that when you're unwrapping a chocolate bar.
Right. But it's a good reminder of the human element behind every single bar.
Absolutely. So once the pods are harvested, what happens next?
The next step is fermentation. This is where things get really interesting in terms of flavor development.
Oh, tell me more about that.
So after the pods are harvested, the beans inside need to be fermented. This usually takes several days.
Okay.
They basically cover the beans with banana leaves.
Banana leaves. Interesting.
Yeah, and this allows these microbes to break down the fruit pulp surrounding the beans.
So the flavor development starts right away.
Exactly. The fermentation process is what gives those beans their complex flavors, those nuanced notes that we associate with good chocolate.
I never knew so much went into it before it even resembles chocolate. So what happens after the beans are fermented?
Next, they're spread out to dry, usually under the sun. This reduces the moisture content and gets them ready for roasting.
Okay, now we're talking. I bet this is where those classic chocolate aromas start coming out.
You got it. Roasting is essential for developing those rich, irresistible aromas.
So what happens after the roasting process?
After roasting, they crack open the beans and remove the outer shells. That leaves you with the inner nibs, and that's what they use to make chocolate. Those nibs are then ground down into that thick paste, the cacao liquor that we talked about earlier.
Ah, so we've got a cacao liquor. Are we ready to start making chocolate bars now?
Almost. Remember how we talked about separating the cacao butter earlier?
Yeah.
Well, they do that again here. And then they combine those components, cacao solids, cacao butter, and add sugar and often milk powder.
Got it. And those different combinations and proportions are how we get all the different types of chocolate.
You got it. Dark, milk, white, it's all in the mix.
And then, of course, we can't forget about conching.
Exactly. That final step is what gives us that smooth, melt-in-your-mouth texture that makes chocolate so irresistible.
It's amazing, really, how much care and precision goes into every bite of chocolate we enjoy. It's a true testament to centuries of innovation.
I agree. However, as delicious and fascinating as this journey from bean to bar is, one of your sources highlights another side to this industry.
You're talking about the ethical concerns, right?
Yeah.
Specifically, the child labor issues in certain parts of the industry. Yeah, it's something I definitely don't think about enough when I'm enjoying a chocolate bar. What really stood out to you in that source about what's happening over there?
Oh, it was just really striking. You know, on one hand, we have those fun facts, like you were saying, that giant 12,000-pound chocolate bar.
Right.
And on the other, we have this really harsh reality for a lot of cacao farmers, especially in West Africa. The source talks about how child labor is still a major problem.
Yeah.
And instead of, going to school, a lot of kids are forced to work on these farms in really dangerous conditions for almost no money.
It's just heartbreaking, It's really hard to think about those two sides of chocolate at the same time, that pure indulgence and then this really dark side. It's a lot to process, so it makes you wonder what's being done about it. I mean, is there any hope for things to change?
Yeah, I mean, the good news is that awareness is growing, and with that comes, people demanding change.
Yeah.
One of the things your sources highlight is fair trade chocolate,
Okay.
which aims to make sure that cacao farmers get fair prices.
Right.
And that you have better labor standards and safer working conditions on those farms.
So like when I'm at the store and I choose a fair trade chocolate bar,
Right.
I'm actually making a difference.
You are. Every time you choose fair trade, you're essentially casting a vote for ethical sourcing and helping to combat child labor in the industry.
That's really empowering, actually, to think that we as consumers have that choice.
Yeah.
But fair trade is just one part of the solution, right?
Yeah.
What else is being done to address some of these problems?
Yeah. So your sources also talk about how crucial sustainable farming practices are.
Okay.
One example is something called agroforestry. Have you heard of that?
No.
So basically, it's integrating trees into cacao farms.
Yeah.
And that can help prevent deforestation, improve the soil health, encourage biodiversity. It's a win-win for the environment and the farmers.
Yeah, definitely.
And then there are also these certification programs like the Rainforest Alliance and the Cocoa and Forests Initiative. Have you heard of those?
Yeah, I've seen those labels around.
So those programs promote these environmentally friendly farming practices, and they try to, create a better livelihood for the farmers.
So it's not just about ethical labor. It's also about making sure that the cacao industry itself is sustainable, long term.
Exactly.
That sounds like a lot of different groups are trying to tackle this problem, which is encouraging.
It really is. And even some of those big chocolate companies that everybody knows,
Yeah.
like Mars and Hershey's and Nestle,
Right.
they've actually joined this movement. They're making commitments to eliminate child labor from their supply chains.
Wow.
Now, of course, one of your sources mentions that there are still a lot of challenges ahead,
Mm-hmm.
but these steps that are being taken combined with pressure from consumers and just more awareness,
Right.
it really does offer a glimmer of hope for a more, ethical and sustainable future for chocolate.
It really feels like we're at a turning point. At least I hope so.
Me too.
But now, besides all of, the ethical aspects and the challenges, one of these sources also mentioned some really exciting innovations that are happening in the chocolate world. It's not all doom and gloom, right?
Oh, definitely not. Chocolate's going through like this really exciting renaissance.
Okay.
And one of the biggest trends is, artisanal chocolate makers. They're really shaking things up.
Yeah, I've seen those, fancy chocolate bars at the store.
Yeah.
But what makes them so different? Is it just like a marketing term?
No, not at all. These artisans are super passionate about their craft.
Okay.
I like to think of them as the sommeliers of the chocolate world.
Okay.
They source these high-quality cacao beans from specific regions, often small farms or cooperatives, just like you would find with specialty coffee or wine.
Oh, that's interesting.
In each region, each farm even has its own unique terroir that impacts the flavor of those beans.
Huh. So it's all about really appreciating those subtle differences in flavor.
Exactly. They really want to highlight those nuanced flavor profiles and
Ah.
create these unique tasting experiences.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they'll even put like the percentage of cacao on the label, similar to how wine bottles will tell you, what grapes were used.
Oh, that's interesting. I've never really noticed that before.
It's a whole new way to experience chocolate.
That's so cool. And it seems like this whole artisanal chocolate movement, it really aligns with that, that growing consumer demand for things like ethical sourcing and sustainability.
It totally does. A lot of these artisanal chocolate makers, they make it a priority to use organic and fair trade ingredients.
Okay.
And they're really invested in supporting sustainable practices all along their supply chain.
So you can feel good about indulging in a high quality product,
Yeah.
knowing that you're also supporting a more ethical and sustainable system. And then on top of all that, there's another trend that I'm super curious about that's mentioned in the sources, vegan chocolate. I feel like it's everywhere these days.
It really is.
What do you think about it?
I think it's great. Vegan chocolate has definitely exploded in popularity. And, it reflects how much more aware people are of, different dietary needs and preferences.
Right.
And honestly, the quality has improved so much.
Yeah.
I think you'd be amazed at how delicious and indulgent some of these plant-based alternatives are these days.
I have to admit, I was a little skeptical at first. I mean, how do you even make chocolate without milk? But I've tried a few brands recently,
Yeah.
and I was really impressed.
It's amazing what they can do now, right?
It is. So what are they using instead of milk?
Oh, there are so many different options now.
Okay.
You'll find vegan chocolate bars made with oat milk, almond milk, coconut milk, you name it.
Oh, wow. So many choices.
Yeah, it's really cool. And each one brings like its own unique flavor and creaminess to the chocolate.
That makes sense. So even if you have dietary restrictions or, maybe you're just trying to be more mindful of what you eat, you don't have to miss out on chocolate.
Exactly. And it just goes to show you how much innovation is happening in the industry.
It really does feel like chocolate's going through a revolution.
It is a delicious revolution.
Wow, what a deep dive this has been.
I know, right?
From ancient civilizations using cacao beans as money to, worrying about child labor and sustainability and everything in between. Who knew there was so much to learn about chocolate?
It's incredible how something so, seemingly simple has this long, complex history that's so intertwined with culture and economics and, even ethics.
It really makes you appreciate every bite, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And don't forget those fun facts. That 12,000-pound chocolate bar still blows my mind.
I know, right? It's like something out of Willy Wonka. Makes you wonder what other chocolatey surprises are out there.
Maybe there's a lost city paved in chocolate bars just waiting to be discovered.
Now that'd be a deep dive. But seriously, thinking about chocolate's journey from ancient Mayan ceremonies to the artisanal bars we have today,
Right.
it's pretty incredible how far it's come, and it just makes you wonder what the future holds,
It really does. What do you think the future of chocolate looks like? Any predictions?
That's a tough one. Will we go back to paying for our chocolate with cacao beans?
Oh.
Or maybe we'll have, like, personalized chocolate subscriptions tailored to our DNA or something?
Oh, wow.
Okay, maybe that's a bit out there, but who knows? The possibilities are endless, right?
They really are. I do have to admit, though, part of me hopes some things never change, like that feeling of biting into a really good piece of chocolate.
Oh, absolutely. That's a classic.
Yeah, no matter what innovations happen in the future, that feeling of pure chocolate bliss is timeless.
Totally. Well, this has been an amazing deep dive.
It really has.
I feel like I've learned so much, not just about how chocolate is made, but also, about the history, the ethics, the future of it all. Definitely given me a lot to think about.
I'm so glad. It's been a pleasure diving into all things chocolate with you.
Likewise. Until next time.